because there is no such thing as time. Everything is happening all at once. In your journey, you're collapsing some of your timelines that you no longer want or desire, while also bringing back the lower fractals of yourself in order to become your wholest version. I've always been the type of person to be my own worst critic. Any mistake or misjudgment that I've ever made, I've always picked apart and dissected. And if I ever wasn't sure which side of the equation I fell on, whether or not I was in the wrong or not, I would always make sure to get other people's opinions, unbiased opinions. But one thing I've come to realize lately, that my collective, the people that are vibrating at the level I'm vibrating at, we've had this change, okay? And you can notice this change a lot when you are watching tarot. At the beginning of our awakening or our spiritual journey, we could see ourselves as the individual that was being taken advantage of in the situation. Not because we never knew our wrongs or because we didn't know our wrongs in that situation, but because that even though we might have made mistakes or done wrong things in that equation, the overall was because we were being taken advantage of or mistreated. And that's why we were doing certain things. And then when we were watching them, we would see ourselves in that position, and we would place certain people in the other position, and it was this person that we needed to release in our life, and that person that we needed to release in our life. And Spirit, is there another person I'm not seeing that I need to release in my life? But recently, we've been able to recognize ourselves as the people that were taking advantage of us. We were able to recognize that we played not just a small mistake, but we played huge parts in other people's lives that also made us being the person that was taking advantage of them. I know I'm not saying it right, but basically, we're able to see ourselves in a different light. Like, even though the situation is still the same, we understand that the energy that that person was coming with, we also held that same energy at one point in that dynamic. And we both, coming into the situation at some point of the dynamic, with the energy of fear-based programming that played parts in the reason why the dynamic wasn't working or didn't work. And had we come into the situation or remained in the situation the entire time with the energy of love, the dynamic might have been a whole different situation. It might have had a completely different outcome, right? Because if somebody comes at you with lies and hate, if you show them hate back, it's only going to continue more hate, right? But if you respond out of an energy of love, it changes the trajectory of the situation in some way. They might not appreciate you coming at it with love at first, and they might have to go quiet. But if they continued coming at you with hate, it would make them look bad, and they don't want to look bad, right? So situations have now become less them against us and us against them, or us against them and them against us, and more of every single person had a part to play in the reason why the situation turned out the way it did. And had anybody at any time changed their perspective and came at it with a place of love, the situation would have been different, or could have been different at least. So it's not about that individual, and it's not about the other individual, or even that individual, or in this individual. It's not about any particular person. It's about all of us. It's about the energy that we bring forth, and whether we're basing that on love or fear. I hope that makes sense. Because say you and somebody else gets into another argument, and the reason you got into the argument might have been something that would have been understandable, because say you told this person over and over again you didn't like this thing that they did, and yet they keep doing it. We get into this argument, but a little time goes by and the argument gets more heated and more stressful, and stress happens to be one of your triggers. And you think you've handled stress decently ever since it became one of your triggers, because you've tried to work through it. But little did you know that every time you get too stressed to a certain point, you say you just need to walk away or go do something else, but in reality, you have actually disassociated and left your body. You went unconscious, or you fainted, or whatever, right? But for some reason, you blocked this out of your head. You blocked this out of your mind, out of your thoughts. So you have no awareness, no remembrance of ever getting to a point where you fell unconscious or fainted, because you didn't realize that you were disassociating. You thought you were just, telling the other person you just needed to go for a walk or something, and then that was it. So you go the rest of your relationship or friendship holding a grudge on this other person because you think that they never took the time or effort to ever finish out that conversation with you and make things right. But when in reality, you guys might have never finished that conversation out, but that person sat there with you and had your head on their lap and was rubbing your back and telling you it was okay until you were able to come out of that disassociation. They took care of you when you were unconscious and you never even knew about it. And yet they didn't rub that into your face, and they didn't make you seem like you didn't see them for, all that they do for you, or see them for their worth, because they never decided to throw that in your face. They didn't want you to think anything about it if you weren't able to handle it already. You were fainting or disassociating for a reason, and they thought that it was better for you to figure that out on your own rather than to bring it up because obviously your body couldn't handle it in the first place, correct? So when I say that my collective is now seeing things in a different light, it's because we've now seen every situation and every circumstance that happens in every situation from a million different perspectives now. Perspectives that we didn't even know were possible until now. That our conscious awareness wasn't even able to conceive of that before, or even picture that happening before. We had a whole different story implanted in our heads that we thought was 100% concrete, when in fact it wasn't even 60% concrete. And now we see things in the correct picture. Although we obviously still weren't wrong in that situation, we were having an argument or a discussion with this other person because of something that they continued to do over and over again. But we were still in that relationship, in that friendship, with unhealed trauma that led to us holding a grudge on them for something that they didn't do to you, that they actually were helping you in that situation. But yet you never knew, because you never knew any of this was going to happen, or any of this had happened because of your disassociation. Does that make sense?
Because we have our intuition, our higher selves, talking to us at all times. I think that goes a little bit further, and when we make decisions in life at certain crossroads, and we choose, say, a left turn over a right turn, when we choose the right turn, we also create another version of ourselves that might have taken the other turn. And that version is alive and living the life that you would have lived if you had taken the left turn in a different universe. And then even that person that lives in that universe, that's you, living just a slightly different life, makes more of you depending on which decision they're making. Okay, so you have you in this universe, and you have you from all of your past lives that have lived and now are in the spirit realms helping your soul now. But they're also you now as well, because you're all one soul. And then you have the you that is alive and well today, that has inevitably made other yous that have branched off into other universes, and then the yous that the other yous have made from their universes. But then you also have your younger self, your infant self, your toddler self, your middle school self, your teenager self as well. And then the highest form of all of you together as well. So if I go to make a right turn instead of a left turn, and something inside me tells me, don't take the right turn, take the left turn, because they have probably already lived out that decision already. They took the right turn and it ended really badly for them. So they whisper to you, don't take that turn, it'll end badly. There'll be a car accident, you're going to die, something like that. And in turn, you hear that in your head or whatever, because, or just a feeling in your gut, because that you is trying to prevent you from going down that road and experiencing what they've already experienced. Just like we, as we are right now, can do our inner child work and go back to that time when we were a young child and something tragic was happening to us. We can go back and reparent ourselves. And when we go back and reparent ourselves, that in turn changes our life in a lot of drastic ways, because we're telling our younger self that we're loved, it's okay, everything that we should have been told as children and weren't. We can go back and do that to our inner child, and then that therefore heals us, and we don't end up making the same decisions that maybe we've already made or could possibly still make. Does that make sense? And I also want to note that the uses that have been here in past lifetimes don't always, or wouldn't always, live in the same place that you live now, or even have the family that you would have now, or even have the same skin color or personality or anything like the you that is now. Like, even though you have the same soul essence and you're in the same soul, your personalities and stuff can be different. So that's also why our guides can be us, but speak differently or look differently if you've been able to see them. Like, I know one of my guides, which is actually one of me in one of my past lives, is an African from like African, like the original fires and rituals and a thick accent kind of thing. And she has like a fierce attitude, like fuck me over and I'll fuck you up kind of thing. And that is actually was me. Okay, but we could also be we could have been like a deity or an ascended master in a past life. And we keep the knowledge that we have from those past lives. We keep it in our soul essence, and we have the ability to tap into everything that they've ever experienced. But sometimes without even trying to tap into it, we gain these insights that they would have already gained. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Was to have 15 lives here on Earth. It would all be happening at one time. Because the time, there is no such thing as time. Everything is happening all at once. So that one source knows that it needs to split out between 15. So it splits automatically into fucking 15 parts. And from the 15 pieces of your soul, you make timelines and you make fractals, and then that pulls out even more of that one of 15 parts of essence, and then it becomes like smaller and smaller for that one, and then that two, and then that three. But then there are some people that are here that originated on Earth. Like, there was never a spirit outside of the soul that was on Earth. You can actually originate on planets, on stars. You can originate on a star and then live out timelines or whatever on different planets. You can originate on a planet and then incarnate to Earth and live out your lives on Earth. But the fact is, it all happens at once because there is no such thing as time. It's all linear. It's all going in circles at all times. I live timelines on all of the planets and all the stars, right? Say I'm a being of all of those, plus Earth, and had multiple lives lived out on Earth. I'm then a spirit that has a soul that then has the embodiment of whatever the spirit has plus whatever the soul has. You all become one, and then that person hypothetically has the ability to shapeshift into whatever frequency they desire, as long as they meet that frequency of that thing that they want to go to, because you are that original spirit soul. You are already the soul and the spirit. You combined. Therefore, you're then one big source. And all you have to do is meet the frequency of whatever you want to be at that moment. So say I want to be one of Tara's past lives as Kiara. I can then match Kiara's frequency and then have the ability to switch my consciousness from this body to my other body. So then if I was a tree in a past life, it's the same thing. I can switch this consciousness into the tree as long as I meet the frequency of the tree. And that's also how channeling works, because all you're doing is tuning your station into whatever frequency the thing that you're channeling is at. So you can either tune in and just match your brain, your essence to it and feel, or you can jump there with your consciousness, or you can shapeshift into whatever it was that you were living at that point in time. So say you were a fucking mermaid, you can jump into what would be a mermaid's body from that point in time that that mermaid is living out. We're what we are right now. My name is Tara, so I'm Tara. I'm in a human body, right? But I know I'm also a soul that has lived many lifetimes. So not only do you have you as Tara in this embodiment, but you have all the tiny little multiple outcomes that she would have simultaneously existing, as long as any lower self that she created by not believing in herself, right? So you made new probabilities in each of those, but you also have your actual Tara and the fractals of herself that split off and got stuck in whatever was happening at that point. So you have these timelines that are playing out of your life from whatever reality that you have ever envisioned, whether that be good or bad. But you also have those fractals of self that got stuck at trauma points and couldn't leave that memory. They were literally stuck there, right? And as you're going in your journey, you're collapsing some of your timelines that you no longer want or desire, while also bringing back the lower fractals of yourself in order to become your wholest version. And when you're knocking out those timelines and calling back those fractals, your vibration is getting higher and higher because you're more embodied in what you want, because you know what you want. You know where you're going. You know what you fucking desire, right? Because as you're growing, you stop fucking settling for little. More and more. So you have your timelines, you have your fractals, you have then each past life that you've ever been and their fractals and their timelines.
And what is disassociation? Well, it's basically any time that we're not present. Well, we're not absolutely present within the moment. And that can be just slightly not in the present for some people. And for others, it can literally be complete disassociation, meaning like we just basically leave this reality altogether and go somewhere otherworldly. Times where we are living our life and our mood is fluctuating, right? First off, we tend to see these other dimensions or these parallel worlds, these parallel universes, as something that scientifically happens, right? And somehow the millions and billions of people that are living in this world are jolted into another parallel universe by something done to them by, say, NASA or CERN or something like that, right? But what we're failing to be aware of is the fact that every single person is living in this universe and creating their own reality, their own universe. So my universe, my reality will be completely different than my child's or my brother's. We could live in the exact same house and our realities be completely different. Why is that? It's because of our awareness, because of our emotional state, because of our internal well-being. And so, depending on your own emotional state, your own feelings, your own conscious awareness, what you choose to see in your life while you're creating this reality is going to discern or decide which universe you are living in at that time. What am I trying to say? So, me and my brother live in the same house, okay? Just say that we don't, but whatever. I am living in a universe where I'm completely in Zen. I'm feeling amazing, and I'm having a wonderful fucking time, and I'm just living life, and I'm chilling, and I'm like, hell yeah! And my brother, who has the same things that I have, we have cable, we have water, we have food, all of that stuff, right? They have the same things that I have, yet he can be in a completely distressed, depressed state of wounding. Like, his reality is completely different than my reality. I'm blissful and zen, and he's, say, suicidal, right? And you can't always understand what is going on, right? Until maybe you tap into your inner truth and you become aware of what's actually happening. He's living in a different reality than I am. He's in a different universe. His universe, even though he has the same exact things that I have, we're living in the same exact place, his universe can be a depressing, hurtful crap universe where, say, technically he could be living in a universe where his government is saying, you have to tell us what you do every single day, and you have to report back to us every single day and let us know this, and this about you. Whereas, even though I'm living in the exact same spot as he's living in, that might not be my reality. That might not be things that I'm supposed to do. My government might not be demanding that of me. And why is that? It's because what we allow in our awareness, what we choose to see, what we choose to project. I'm projecting Zen, I'm projecting bliss, therefore I'm receiving Zen and bliss. He's projecting depression, anxiety, emotional trauma, therefore he's receiving that back. mind. For some reason, I was looking at some old pictures and just reminiscing about my life, and out of nowhere, I had this big emotional release. Before I started working really hard on myself and being able to express my emotions and be able to just like be in my emotions and understand them and allow them to happen. If I ever got to that point where I was like really emotional, really crying or whatever, typically I would send myself into disassociation. And over the last few years, I realized that over these very intense emotions and feelings, I would actually very much disassociate into a completely different reality. Like I would typically get the overwhelming urge to want to fall asleep. But I couldn't be awake any longer. I needed to go to sleep. And therefore I would usually end up falling asleep. Literally when I was a child, and after going through so many traumatic events and without understanding that those traumatic events, those emotional outbreaks would put me asleep, later on in my early teens or preteens, whenever I wasn't able to fall asleep because my mind was going everywhere, I would literally purposely think about one of my traumatic events in order to fall asleep, in order to start crying to be able to fall asleep. That's crazy, right? And obviously then I didn't realize what was going on. Hell, a few years ago I didn't realize what was going on. But over the last few years in my healing journey, I've come to the understanding of what that was, what I was doing, and then diving deeper into spirituality and knowing that every time we go to sleep, it's not just a dream, that we're literally, when we fall asleep, we are going into the astral. And sometimes we're conscious of this and other times we're not, but we're always in the astral plane when we are dreaming. But back to this last week and my emotional releasing. This was the first time in my existence, ever since I started having these traumatic events, that I was able to be present in the moment in this emotional state and not go into disassociation. I was aware enough of the situation and what it was about to do. I was aware that I was about to disassociate when I stopped myself. I did not allow myself to disassociate. I said aloud, I thought, I felt, I will not let myself disassociate. I will continue feeling these feelings and releasing these emotions in this present moment. And I will not allow myself to disassociate. And I was able to completely release those emotions. I was able to completely let out all of the crying and pain that I needed to in that moment. Because I made myself aware of what was going on, and I chose to stay in that moment and not allow myself to disassociate. Isn't that insane? Like, it's such a crazy feeling when you finally come into awareness of yourself and your coping mechanisms, and then you no longer allow those coping mechanisms to live your life for you, you know? that you take back the power of your own life and you get to live in that present moment and actually become aware of everything that's actually happening around you for you, that you are creating. That was just such a monumental moment in my life, and I had to, because I had that emotional release and I was able to stay in the present moment without disassociating, my whole week was different. Like every tiny little thing, tiny or big thing that would have ever irritated me, pissed me off, put me in a bad mood, those things were happening. And they were happening to people in my reality and causing them distress. And while they're in distress, I was still zen. I was still happy. I was still content. I was still living life in the full capacity that I think we could live life in. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. Like that no matter what is going on the outside of you, as long as your insides are aligned and you're present, it doesn't fucking matter what's going on the outside. I love it. Coming forward and saying, like, listen, I have the me within the me is like, I am me, but then I am also this man named Bill and this girl named Judy, and they have different personalities and different things that they like and different things that they don't like, right? What if you never named these yous within you, right? What if they had just said, you know, at times I feel like my urges are more manly and I like different things. Or I'm not sure why I feel the things I'm feeling right now, or saying the things I'm saying. They're not typically what I want or express as me as a person, right? So what if it was just more of like they just went into different states of being at different periods of time? Like they just felt differently? Would it make us think differently about that so-called disorder? Because what I'm realizing is that that can actually be different things. You can look at it in this way, where that person is them, and all those other people that feel separate is also them, but just at different time frames of their life that something ended up happening, that they disassociated, is what we would know it as in mental health terms. But in spiritual terms, it's soul fragmentation. Like you're cutting off a part of yourself because either your mom or your dad told you that you shouldn't like the same sex, or maybe it's because they told you that little boys don't wear dresses and they don't wear pink. And so you're a little boy and you're being told that that's not what little boys do. So because you're told that it's not what you're supposed to do, you stop wearing dresses and stop wearing pink, even though that's what you wanted to do at that time, right? So then as an adult, when we get that urge to wear a dress or wear pink, we associate it with that trauma or whatever. But we also don't know why we want to wear a dress or wear pink. So it feels like a different person to us, right? But what we don't know is that we've always liked wearing dresses and wearing pink. It's just that we cut that part off so long ago and we had forgotten about it. Then now it feels like it's a whole different person. And the real scary thing is that every single person, most likely every single person, has disassociated at some point in their life. At some point. And that disassociation might have only been for a few seconds, but who knows what was said or done within those few seconds that could change who we are as a person. So I think a lot of people need to be understanding of that within themselves, but not only within themselves, but when they look at other people. When you look at another person who is being a fucking asshole to you in that moment, we just automatically judge that they're being an asshole, right? We don't for a second stop and think, why are they being an asshole? Are they even fully there in that moment? Or have they brought out one of their parts that had disassociated? Maybe how they're showing up now in this moment is only a shadow of who they are as a person. And what if some of us who are just like everybody else and disassociates and cuts off pieces of them, but what if there was a more spiritual aspect to this thing that they're doing in the first place? What if it's, yeah, they're still soul fragmenting, but they also have disassociating for a whole different reason. Sometimes it seems as if they're disassociated when in fact their consciousness isn't fully within that vessel at the moment and within another one of their vessels living a life at that moment. Because every moment of time, past, present, and future, is all happening at once. So at any given time, your whole consciousness might not even be fully within that vessel that you're thinking it's in right now. At any given moment, part of our consciousness is within multiple parts of us. So we're not all fully within our capacity to show up as a person at all times. Sometimes we're probably not even remotely within this vessel. Sometimes our consciousness is showing up for us in such a small amount that we could almost feel like we're a baby, incapable of doing anything for ourselves. Because some of us have been easily able to skip dimensions and skip into a different time frame at all times. But because of so much trauma and because we were disassociating so often during childhood and stuff, we completely forgot about our spiritual gifts to be able to skip, jump, and teleport somewhere else.
If energies are always flowing and always changing, right? And energies that are flowing causes different expressions of emotions. So if it's an energy of change and that change is inevitably stuff that is tearing down everything that you've built, you might have expressions of fear and doubt and sadness, right? So it's in order to know who you are and know what your true energy and expression of emotions is, You have to be whole within yourself. You have to be healed in order to be able to remain within your own energy and your own expression of your emotions at all times. Because at all times, people who are sensitive, people who feel energy in different degrees than other people do, will have the need to be able to have discernment of what the energy is and whose it is. But if you don't know who, at least know what energy it is and if it's your own or if it's not. Because, for instance, say somebody that you were talking to within the last day was feeling angry with their spouse, and all of a sudden you start feeling angry with your spouse, but there's not really a reason for you to be angry with your spouse, then you know that that's not your emotion, that it's somebody else's that you're just feeling. The problem becomes when we don't know who we truly are and we don't know what our expressions of things are, or our expressions of certain emotions are, then we might confuse other people's expressions of emotion and how they're feeling at the time to reflect in us and then feel like it's our own when it's not. That's why having boundaries with people and being able to stand within those boundaries at all times becomes really important. And not only that, but having energetic boundaries as well. So, for instance, if you didn't have energetic boundaries, anyone and everyone would be able to infiltrate your energy system and make you feel things that aren't what you should be feeling or what you want to be feeling. For instance, somebody that you haven't put up energetic or 3D boundaries with can start thinking about you sexually and then end up making your own energy feel like you are thinking of them in the same way when you're not, and you don't want to, and you don't like them, and you don't feel that type of way with them. But they can almost trick your energy into thinking that it's your own if you don't know who you are or have those energetic boundaries in place, along with, just simply stating to them, like, don't fuck with me. Because we have the ability to alter and change and send people certain energies that aren't their own, that are literally somebody else's, that are made up, that are fantasized about or facilitated in an evil kind of yucky way. So that's why it becomes important to know who you are, know what you want. And if those things aren't who you are or what you want, then you know that they aren't yours and you need to send them away. Like, literally resend the invitation that you had literally given out because you weren't energetically protective of yourself.
Who you were in a situation with, no matter what this person did or said to you that ever made you hurt, no matter what thing happened in those dynamics that other person was showing up as, no matter how bad it would have been, no matter how much other people would have just completely formulated such a bad opinion for, if they were in that type of situation, you never fucking would. And that's what people thought your biggest fault was. Your biggest fault was. You thought your biggest fault was you didn't know how to continue giving every single person chance after chance after chance after chance. Like, because inevitably you would think if you keep doing the same thing over and over again without it ever changing, it's the definition of insanity, right? Like, so at some point, if a person has shown you time and time and time and time and time and time and time again that they can't be trusted, then surely you must understand that they can't be trusted. Right? But you never was able to fully distrust that person because you always seen the good in them, right? You knew that no matter what, no matter how this person had showed up until now, they were still there. They still had the ability to change and to heal and to be better the next day, right? So you never had that judgment for anybody else. You always had that, I'm gonna love you no matter what. And even though you might have gotten extremely pissed off at them for a while, time would go by and you might have had to put distance between you guys, but no matter what, you could come back to this situation at a later date and still love that person unconditionally as you had before they did that bad thing, as long as they were showing up as a better version of themselves, right? So when you started your awakening and you learned about this whole mirror concept, how the things that inevitably piss you off in other people, the things that you don't like that you see in others and other things and other people, places and things that you didn't like, was because there was a version of yourself that you didn't like. But what you weren't understanding is that it wasn't that you would ever show up in that type of way to another situation. It was never that you had a part of you inside of you that would be able to show up to a situation and hurt somebody and do it with the intentions of hurting somebody. There's no way in hell you would ever be able to hurt somebody like that, right? So you couldn't figure out what this whole mirror analogy was referencing, right? What it was referencing is that you needed to give yourself the same type of grace. That at any point in your life when you were not in the best place, when you felt emotionally triggered or insecure and you lashed out and did something that you knew was an unhealed version of you, right? So it's that thought process between, well, because I knew what I was doing and I did it, that must make me the shittiest person ever alive. And I'm stuck being the shittiest person alive because I did that thing 10 fucking years ago. Change and develop, you can grow. But you have this thing that is like you're in this relationship and it remains healthy for a time span, and then all of a sudden the things that you do in that relationship, the things that you're putting out that you were used to receiving back from this person, that changes, that stops, and they're no longer the same person that you met. They're no longer doing the same types of things that inevitably made you feel close to them in the first place, right? They're presenting themselves different than how they told you they were. You bring it up and you talk to them about it. They say they understand, and they understand what you.
6 months after posting this first mindset, I don't really know. Listening to me say those things again, I can see that even in 6 months, I had disassociated so many different times. And every time I would disassociate, I would do or say something because I wasn't in my full wholeness at the time. And I might not remember what I had done or said depending on how bad that disassociation moment or time frame was. But in the midst of that disassociating that I was doing, that wasn't even my own fault for it happening because it was due to traumas of my childhood that I didn't even know happened, because they also happened and put me into a disassociation. But through that, every time you were disassociating, you might have been doing or saying things that you wouldn't have really done when you were in your full embodiment, leading you to cause other people to get triggered and maybe even disassociate, and then them in states of their disassociation also were doing things and saying things that weren't the greatest, that wouldn't have been said or done if they hadn't been disassociating at that time. And it's just this huge, big cycle of us who were hurt at some point in our life, then saying or doing something that would hurt somebody else while we weren't in our full embodiment, and then that also causing traumas to other people that made them disassociate, which then furthered this cycle of hate. And if at any point one of us would just stop and try to be present within the moment at the entire time without disassociating, these things wouldn't have continued, because the continued cycle of hate wouldn't have happened, because you would have been able to be present and understand that there's different perspectives at every time. Every time there's different scenarios and situations that can happen that causes different things. And if you're not present, you don't recognize all of the different ways that you can possibly show up and it still be out of love. And so you can also use this and think about it just in a relationship, and you go into that relationship wanting the best for both people, and something is done at some point that causes you a wound and you trying to stay doing things the best way, yet you keep getting hurt, you eventually, after being drained of all good things within you, need something to fill you back up, so you decide to go and do something with somebody else, and that person that you are with in the beginning finds out, and that furthers the hate. Even if we were wholly together within our true whole embodiment, I don't think one person can ever give you everything you need at any particular given time. I think the idea of a marriage is bizarre, considering the longer you're in that marriage, you are taking the chance that something will end in a dissociation, which will only lead to further hate. If you think about it, one person, unless they are fully, completely everything and anything that the other person might also be, and they both come in it completely honest, so they don't think they have to hide anything, unless you're showing up in the beginning completely open and honest and will never ever not be open and honest no matter what happens, at some point you're risking something going bad, because most of the time you get into a relationship with somebody, no matter how healed you think you might be, you probably aren't completely healed within your divine whole self. Therefore, there's always that risk that you're going to end up hurting that person. So instead, perhaps we're supposed to be maybe in a dominant relationship, but with the understanding that not every person is going to be able to provide everything you need at any given time. Because maybe you might not need a certain thing for a few years, but then during the 5th year, you might need a certain type of behavior that helps put a blanket on another type of behavior. And if that person you're in the dominant relationship with isn't able to provide that type of behavior because they weren't whole, then you're going to go and get that behind their back and lie, cheat, or steal. But if you understand that that person's not going to be able to give you what you need at any given time, and you both are in the understanding of this, you can then allow for times and situations that allow you to go get the thing that you need without it ever hurting the other person.